Educationist Dr. C. Satish to hear his views.
My sincere thanks to the management members of New College for inviting me to share my views on FDI in education. Well, you had the privilege of listening to speakers from various fields, ranging from trade, medical education, banking sector, and of course, my previous speaker, with the HOD of Commerce, also highlighted about the significance of FDIs. I don't want to take much time because I know we have overshooted the time allotted for this particular panel discussion. Let me share with you certain facts, and I want the audience to ponder over what I have said and come to a conclusion whether FDI in education is required or not. Well, I am in the educational field for the past 30 years, 2 years in a government school and 28 years in a private schools before taking over as the director of another group of institution. Well, my experience in the educational field for 30 years have given me a clear indication much has to happen at the education sector. Well, my dear students and the respectable members of the audience, I really don't know how many of you are aware that in India, as on date, there are 43 boards, 2 national boards, CBSE and ICSE, a board for non-formal education, and almost every state government having a state board to administer quality education to the students. Well, in spite of that, the sad fact is, the survey reports published by the great educationists have indicated there is a drop of 39% of the students before they complete the 12th standards at the school levels. And the RTE Act had been brought in to ensure that the quality education is being offered, given to the students in the nearby area of the school where the private school is situated, indirectly sending the message that the private school offers quality education than the government schools. Seriously, the private school management are looking into the various aspects of the RTE Act, and in their own way they are going about reserving the seats for the underprivileged section of the society. The point here is, we have about 42 boards plus 1 non-formal education board in the country. Should FDI in education should be allowed? As an educationist, well, I like to say, if the FDI in education can provide expansion, excellence, and inclusive education, well, I feel that there's nothing wrong in FDI in education. I would like to place before you certain statistics to prove that, in a way, FDI education can be a boon. You know very well, you'll agree with me, including the panelists who are seated here, that as far as the higher education is concerned, this is a survey report which I'm sharing with you. India is ranking 3rd, the US and the China just above us. But in spite of all those things, the sad fact is, the brain drain is happening at a very large scale from our countries. It is estimated about 160,000 students are going abroad for higher education, and it is costing us about $7 billion. If the FDI in education happens, the educationists view at is, well, to a very large extent, the brain drain can be arrested and a quality education can happen in our country itself. As the panelists were mentioning, there is a craze among us for everything which is branded as foreigns. But there's nothing wrong about it, as long as it provides us the desired quality and expansion and inclusive education happenings. So in a way, I would say that's the type of hurdles the students has to face when they are looking for education abroad. And if FDI in education is happening, well, all these hurdles can be to a very large extent eliminated, and quality education can happen at our country itself. It's not that I'm saying that Indian universities or Indian schools are not providing quality education. But whatever said and done is, the very fact the Right to Education Act had been brought in is an indication that private sector has also to play a role in education in comparison to the government schools. And in spite of that, large number of students, young children, are deprived of quality education, and they are not even aware of such a school education happening in the country. And that's the reason why I felt that in spite of the debates, whether we are going to go into a slavery as discussed by some of the panelists, well, if there is going to be what is called a regulatory board which looks into all these aspects and then allow FDI in education, well, I don't think it's going to be that alarming as discussed by some of the panelists, at least from the education sector angles. The first thing is, I understand from the deliberations that only universities or educational institutions which have a standing of 20 years will be allowed to come into India. And there is also going to be a statutory board which will be overlooking the quality of education which is being offered. And as well, this particular board is going to ensure that whatever the profit they earn by establishing institutions in our country will be reinvested for the infrastructure and development of education and not for any other purpose. If these type of stringent measures are going to be introduced when FDI in education happens, well, I think as educationists, with a very open mind, we should welcome it. There are a lot more issues which I can go on discussing. Well, I will take it up in case some of you have questions to address to me. Well, I will answer the particular point. But let me conclude by saying FDI in education is welcome, provided expansion, excellence, and inclusive education happens in India. Thank you.